Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa and Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Dr. Mitchell Kershner, who has had over 33 years in holistic health and wellness industry. As a naturopathic doctor, professor, past sports medicine massage therapist, and a whole foods cooking instructor, he comes with experiential and practical information that people can apply today. With an emphasis on childhood obesity and diabetes on the rise, and environmental impact of our way of life today, he provides a simple and easy means and methods for creating change that anybody can incorporate in a fun and tasty way. Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Diane. So glad to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. And I'd love for us to start with your own definition of naturopathic medicine.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Because there's so many different ways to approach it. There's so many different people have a different understanding of it. The simplest, because I'm all about keeping it simple. In fact, I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But naturopathic medicine to me is the bridge between the wisdom of nature and the knowledge of science. So essentially, if we look back over history, we've known about the healing powers of nature. We used to do things like literally eat herbs, eat plants, do fasts, do water things, alternating hot and cold by jumping in streams and stuff. That was all the wisdom. All we've done today, and it's only within the last 150 years, is apply the actual science to explaining why that stuff worked. So to me, that's what naturopathic medicine is. It just says, here's this botanical formula. Here's why I'm asking you to stop eating genetically modified wheat products, how it's affecting your digestive system. And now I have the science to back it up.
I love that definition because, all indicators, we always look at nature as a mirror of, what works, and how we want to live our life and what that looks like. And being able to put the words to it with the science, that allows us to explain a lot of it. So when we start getting diseases or we start getting off track or things aren't working, we can always go back to, okay, how was it done originally? And what are we doing now that makes that different? So I think that's awesome. And so, Mitchell, also you talk about, why do you refer to yourself as a vitalistic naturopathic doctor?
Oh, good question. Not too many people are familiar with that particular term. There's a small segment of us as naturopaths. Vitalistic is really referring to, have you heard of the acronym KISS, K-I-S-S, keep
Yes.
it simple, and whatever else you want to put there?
Let's say sweetheart.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. Well, I've simplified that. Keep it simple, period. Right? There's something magical when you consider things like feng shui. There's a science behind it. When you consider things around the house with how to simplify your lives. So the same for vitalistic naturopaths, what we do is take a step back. There's a concept of people are very vitamin D deficient today. Why? Because we're spending so much time indoors.
Right. And sunscreen.
Yeah, exactly. Then when we go out on the weekend, we either get sunburn or we load up with sunscreen, which that's another whole topic right there.
Right.
Or we go outside. And if you do it in increments throughout the week. So for me as a vitalistic naturopath, what I would actually prescribe is go outside 3 or 4 times a week, 15, 20 minutes. Go eat your lunch outside. Because when you get that little bit of sun exposure to your skin has a natural protective mechanism, but it can't introduce that mechanism with certain cells in the skin if you only go out once a week on a weekend and then expose it to hours and hours of sun. What I do is tell people, you got to take a lunch break, go sit outside. Even if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just get some fresh air, get as much skin exposure. You're getting fresh sunlight because, vitamin D, Diane, is, we say a lot about it and they call it a vitamin, but because of the way it acts in the body, it's also known as a hormone. So as a vitalistic naturopath, what we want to say is we don't know all this stuff. We don't know all the details. Let nature do its thing. That's why I said with hydrotherapy, which is an actual therapy, the use of water back and forth, hot and cold, how much time you spend doing this. Almost every morning, I do a ice water sponge bath. Right? I would jump into a sponge pool, an ice pool, but I can't. So I fill a sink with ice water and I just sponge off. And I'm telling you, there's something naturally stimulating about that. I don't need caffeine in the morning, right? Ice water. So
right.
Vitalism, just taking it back to one of the premises of naturopathic medicine is vis medicatrix naturae. It's Latin for with the healing power of nature. So vitalistic naturopaths, we really believe in the healing power of nature. Sunlight, not vitamin D in a capsule.
Right.
And I'm not saying there isn't a place for vitamin D in a capsule, but if you go outside, go get some sunlight.
Right. It's going back to those, fundamental things. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little more about like foundational health and why is that important?
We live in an era of access to the world of information. So much information, Diane, our brains are exploding and it's so confusing. And who are you listening to? There's back and forth between eggs are good for you, eggs are not good for you. Butter is good for you. No, use margarine. No, go back to butter. Which oil should I be using? What's it? It's crazy. Basic foundation. Now, one of the things that I really believe is missing in our modern day era of eating is more seasonality. What I'm referring to is Mother Nature. She gave us fruit at the peak of its tastiness, at the peak of its sugar, is in the middle of summer. Fruit also has a very high water content. So it provides us with the extra hydration. In the winter, there are foods that are provided to us. Like, do you know the difference between a summer squash and a winter squash?
No.
The time of the year it's harvested. And because of that, there's certain nutritional value that are offered to our bodies in the winter squash for the winter, just like summer squash for the summers. So if we just get back to a basic foundation, and again, I'm going to come back to KISS, keep it simple, sweetheart, right? Just basic foundation, get back to eating the way it was actually designed for us before we integrated all this technology. And again, I'm not against technology. I'm not against freezing foods and, dehydrating them. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we eating closer to the way things are? Because I'll be perfectly honest, we are in a situation right now with the environment. If we don't make some changes, what kind of a world are we leaving our children and grandchildren? Honestly. And the thing is, we can make a difference. And one of the ways to do that is change your plate. There's the philosophy of, eat it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat it and under what conditions. Eat with the season, eat the way Mother Nature gave it to us. That's the basic foundation.
Right. So, one of the things that you're passionate about, and I'm right along with you, is really looking at where are we at today with like childhood obesity. I mean, that you're seeing now where children are having more diseases than ever. They're more overweight than ever. They, with electronics, they're not, playing at recess like we used to. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are happening, a lot of factors. But this is one of the first times in history where parents are actually outliving their children because of how things are right now. So tell us a little bit about, where are we at with that and what can parents do to start shifting that?
Well, we're coming up on the 3rd year anniversary of my cousin. He was 54 years old. He took over the family business, his family business stuff, multimillionaire, very successful. 54 years old, had a triple heart attack. They couldn't bring them back. They couldn't revise them.
Oh.
Now, why did that happen? Overweight, not eating well, not exercising, anything but his brain and his fingers, and not getting outside, not doing those things, and a lot of imbalance. And so the same thing is happening to our children. There are studies done and day in and day out of what's happening with all this technology and the amount of time kids are spending in front of some kind of a screen. Doesn't matter if it's your phone, a tablet, a computer for school, surfing just for entertainment's sake, distraction. This is going to land kind of hard for some parents, but you are the one in charge. Not only are you the parent, you're also the one paying the bills. All right. And they've done a study. It was a very nicely laid out study in Australia where they showed by removing devices from kids at a certain part of the evening, whether it was 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and saying everything's being shut off. Now you think, well, how can I control my kids? If they have access to their phone, they can sneak. Well, you take them away if you have to. You'd like to try to get them to be more responsible and be involved in the conversation. But what they found in the study, Diane, was kids were irregular with their sleep patterns. They were irregular with their eating and their appetites. They were moody. They were not studying well. Their attention span was just literally was so short. It was hard to have anything that resembled a conversation. When they removed the devices after 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it didn't take but about 1 to 2 weeks to start seeing the change. Their appetites leveled off. Their moods were less moody. They were not swinging all over. Their sleep started to improve, which means they woke up in the morning with a bit more ability to focus and have attention back at school. All this from just cutting. Do you know the average hours per day a kid spends in front of a screen? Do you know that?
Tell us.
Now, this is an average, and you understand what average is. Right. 9 hours a day in front of a screen.
Right.
And that starts first thing in the morning, checking their Facebook and their whatever else, right? I'm not blaming Facebook. Facebook didn't force them. But 9 hours a day is an average, which means some young people are on for 10, 11, 12 hours in a day.
Right.
So what can parents do? Limit that. Right. And one simple thing to do is at dinner time or at a meal time.
Right.
No devices.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say don't blame Facebook, but there is definitely some responsibility with the social media, because we know now that some of the, advertising, some of the things are being put in there are meant to have you be addicted to their platforms so that you do continue. That's where all the scrolling came in. This is all these things that happen. And so, yes, we can't necessarily blame that. However, when we know that there are addictive qualities to that, setting alarms, having some, outside controls, and as parents, knowing that there is an addictive quality to this is how we can help our children to be like, it's like, oh, I want to just look at one more thing, or my friend is going to say this. And it's like, and then that one more thing, and we've done it as adults, is 2 hours later, right? And so when you start looking at that, you have to look at, okay, well, what can we do, and what kind of structures can we put in place that what else can we be doing during that time? And we have to be really active in that. And particularly now, I think there's this time of, it's just a weird time. I don't even know what to call it right now, other than, there's this time of like, well, don't be too hard on the child. There's kind of like this coddling that starts happening around this, versus going, okay, hey, we know the things, and going back to nature that actually support kids, and they don't know it necessarily, right? Because the brain develops at different stages as well. And so this is why the knowledge of the parent can come in to help guide the kids in these kind of areas. So, when parents are getting the pushback, from the kids, maybe even from, just society in general about like, why are you pushing this on your child? How is it that, if kids are sitting on the couch for, 6 hours a day, 9 hours a day, how do they help them kind of transition? Because this isn't something that happened overnight.
Of course not. Of course not. It applies to the same principle with the childhood obesity. Isn't it interesting that they correlate, right? When you look at the rates of childhood obesity and the fact that we have access to more information than ever before in history, we have access to everything, right? So even with all the information, our children are still getting heavier and heavier. And the reason that I clump those two together, obesity and diabetes, is because on the rate that they're going, the diabetes used to be broken up into two simple categories. It was so easy 50 years ago, right? It was either adult onset, which meant it happened usually in the 6th or 7th decade of life or later, or type 1. That was it. Well, as a result of what's happening in our culture, type 2 is no longer adult onset. Now it's just type 2. And there's subunits of that too. So what's happening there is when you combine fast foods, highly processed, low nutritional value, and no activity other than, what they say today, a kid's best worked muscles are their thumbs. All that texting,
right.
They're the most advanced muscles we have. And yet some of the other ails that go along with all this technology is what I've got several chiropractic colleagues, and they've all said the same thing. They're starting to see on an ongoing basis kids coming in with high headaches and migraines and irritations in the neck and upper back problems and low back problems. And so they've actually called it technology neck, from the head bending over for 9 hours a day.
Wow.
The reason I said you can't blame Facebook or Twitter or any of the other platforms, it's like saying you can blame McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken for why our kids are obese. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's not the case. So what do we do as parents? And look, is it going to be easy? No, because we've set them up. I have a friend who actually has a lice boutique here near where I live. She would see kids, and you'd be surprised how many kids are dealing with lice in school. She once had a 3 or 4-year-old in her clinic. She would start trying to treat the child and couldn't get him to calm down and relax. The mom handed him a tablet, and within 1 minute, the kid was calm and relaxed and focused and didn't care what my friend was doing with his head.
Wow.
60 seconds. Wasn't even 60 seconds. Now, what that's telling me is we are setting up our children for addictive behaviors.
Right.
As parents, the challenge is, and I will say it will be a challenge at first, is to limit the amount of time. And, you're the parent. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be where you watch your child die before you easy? No. Ask my aunt that question. Right. No. We every season that we go through holidays for the last 3 years, there was always, where's Russell? So no. When you ask, you get engaged and enrolled in the conversation of what's harder, implementing some discipline and going, no, you get an hour and a half a day of social media, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, 30 minutes in the evening, or you want to do it, an hour, whatever, you got to figure that out. But right. We don't put some limits on it. It's like saying, sure, go to the gas station and buy junk food. Here's $10, just go for it.
Right.
Where's
it's huge. Yeah, it's huge to be able to look at the bigger picture, because I think, the whole handing the phone or the tablet or whatever that soothes them in the moment doesn't teach them the skills, how to self-soothe, how to, and even communication, right? There's I'll see kids sit next to each other and they're texting each other and they're sitting next to each other versus opening their mouth and talking. And so, there's a ripple effect of this addiction to electronics to really, people, how it affects their relationships, you'll see whole families going out to dinner and everyone's on their devices, right? And where are we checking in to see how are people doing and what's going on? And I've been guilty at it at times too. Like, oh, let me just check this one thing, or oh, I'll do this one thing, and then it's like, where are you going to set that down, and what's that actually going to look like? And you do kind of start getting into those habits. So if we know nature gets us back to our center, that we can utilize those things. What can be let's just say, what are 1 to 3 things that parents can do if let's say they've got Johnny who sits on the couch all day and eating fast food, and they're snappy and moody and have headaches because this is something that's been going on for years now. How do they start backing that off? Because there's going to be resistance from the kids, because there is now, they've become used to this, right? This is how it is for them. This is their reality. And, right. There's going to be you're mean, you're this is not fair. And, all the things that come up with kids, no matter what age they're at. how can parents start introducing these more healthier choices that will impact the longevity of their children's lives?
Well, again, it's going to be, we have created their addictive behavior as adults and parents. So the first place to start, just like that Australian study, is start limiting it at night. Cut it off at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 11 if they're a little bit older, but for sure by 10 o'clock, by 10 o'clock if they're younger, or 9. Like, that's a good place to start as far as the technology part. When it comes to things like sitting on the couch and snacking on junk, well, don't have it around. If it's not there, they won't snack on it. Trust me, if they get hungry enough and all you have around are, healthier snack options, trail mix, dried fruit, carrots and dip or whatever, right? If that's all you have around, the kids will eat it after they're done throwing their little temper tantrum. And once they're done and they realize that you're not going to give in, they'll stop throwing. We've seen it happen. I literally personally saw when we were making a transition with when I was seeing patients at the time, when we're having the parents stop giving their kids the junk food and replaced it with something healthier. Of course, there was resistance. Of course, there was a fight back. And it didn't last long. Kids are really malleable. You have to understand, if you take away something from them, but you give them something in replace, it won't take long if you can just get through the little fit that they throw. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, whatever. Man, they'll just pick it up and go. They're fine, right? We always think, oh my God, they're so fragile. No, we're making them fragile by literally not only giving them everything, but then feeding it to them. So make healthier food, make healthier snacks. And trust me when I tell you, it's not as hard as you think. Take a organic juice, water it down a little bit, pour it in some popsicle things and stick a stick in it. You just made a really healthy version of a popsicle.
Right.
It doesn't have to take a lot. I'm trying to get some people off of like junk food candy. I tell them, have 1 or 2 dried dates and a teaspoon of peanut butter or almond butter, one of the other butters. You eat 1 or 2 of those, you are satisfied. It is called dessert. You can call it a snack for that matter. Mm-hmm. So we're talking quick, simple, and healthy.
Yeah. It's important for people to really look at like what is happening in their personal environment. When I was helping people with their homes and really looking at what they had in there, and especially when it came down to food, I would always say, don't sleep with the enemy. Like, don't have something in there that is not healthy for you. It's not to say, do you never get to have it again? You make it where you have to get in your car and drive and get it, versus at night when you're, grumpy, tired, agitated, and you're just grabbing whatever there is. You want to be able to have those healthy choices at your fingertips. So that is so great as a reminder for people to, create what you want in your space, and your kids and yourself will adapt to that, and they'll have that happen. And it makes such a big difference what we create in our environments. So in fact, that's one of the things I love talking to my guests about, is because we get to create our environment and we live differently in like our kitchen, our living room, or our bedroom. What's your favorite room in your home and why?
Oh my goodness. Do I have to pick one? So I say that
just favorite.
It depends on where I'm at. Like, I spent yesterday probably about 2 hours, a little under 2 hours, cooking. Now for me, it becomes meditative. Either I put on some music or I put some show that I don't care about, but it's just, noise in the background. And I've got my oven going, I'm chopping up some stuff, and I'm cleaning while I go so that it's all done when I'm done, or at least most of it. And by the time I was done, in under 2 hours, I had roasted cauliflower, roasted Brussels sprouts, 3 sweet potatoes ready to go. So now I've got all these sort of side dishes ready for the week. And it all came from the same 1 hour in the oven at one time. Done. And when you're done with that, you go to open the refrigerator and you say, well, what am I going to eat today? There is a little smorgasbord in there, right? Because it was all done with a little bit of preparation and a little bit of experience. And when people say, well, I'm not that good at cooking. And my question is, are you familiar with YouTube? Right? You can find anything, just look it up. We have access to all that information, but what are you looking at for? So what room am I most happy in? if I'm cooking, I'm obviously most happy in the kitchen. And for me, as an astrological Cancer Leo, I love cooking. I love knowing that I'm going to be eating well all week long.
Right. That's so great. It's interesting that, I always say that too. You've got to, prepare for your week, because you don't want to wait till you're hungry to go, oh, what am I going to eat? You want to have those different options. And I would take it even a step further and put it like in serving sizes, right? Get those
Yeah.
little smaller containers, right? And have them all spread out so that, if you have an on the go lifestyle, you can grab 2 or 3 of those things, run, go out the door. And, I love your keep it simple, right? Because I think sometimes people think of cooking as this like elaborate Sunday dinner with all these multiple courses and like it's complicated, right? And you can do that, maybe on the weekend or whenever that works for you. But if you're looking at everyday, cooking, literally, if you just keep it simple and you maybe just put some seasoning on something. I mean, sometimes I'll take like an avocado, put some sea salt on it, done. That's a snack, right?
Exactly.
So it doesn't have to be complicated.
No. And look, here's the nice part. We complicate it. So guess what else we could do? Uncomplicate it.
Right. Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to share and make sure that listeners hear this is, one way to lower the resistance from your kids is to have them become part of the conversation. Don't just tell them we're not going to have soda in the house anymore, right? Get them in the conversation. Show them that they have a role in this, right? Kids today, they're much more involved, or they would like to be, rather than just being told, here's what you're going to eat, here's what you're going to drink, here's how much screen time you have.
Right.
No, let them be part of the conversation. Let them be part of the decision making. And what that does is it makes them feel empowered rather than just your slave.
Right.
You're little, I'm going to tell you what to do until you're 18, and then you go make up your own mind. Yeah. Well, no, that's how you're going to fight back. So get them in the conversation. And, and you're so right. I mean, an avocado, what's the big thing right now is avocado toast. You wipe an avocado on a slice of whole grain bread and add some seasoning. You're done. How long does that take?
Yeah. Seconds. Yeah.
Seconds.
So good. Yeah. I love that about incorporating with the kids. I've done this with my grandson, and I make like this probiotic drink that ferments over several days, and he knows what ingredients go in it, and he's part of it. And so, when it's done and complete and we pour it into containers, he was part of that process, that hands-on, you make it an activity, and then he wants it because he helped create it. So really involving the kids. And like, I remember growing up, we chopped things, we put, we helped cook things. It was part of that family dinner, was to create that. And so, looking at that, I know with schedules and things, people can't necessarily, sit down every night, but if you even had a couple nights where you were around the table, that's where people got to learn about, hey, what's new with you? What's going on with you? You get to actually understand that. And that was part of a family foundation. You talk about getting back to nature, right? About having that one-on-one. And so you can see how a lot of these things start tying together. If you're cooking together, you've got good nutrition. And if you're having conversations together, you're not on the electronics, right? And so a lot of these things, they complement each other along the way, and it's creating that lifestyle that allows you to move in the direction of health.
For sure. And one more thing I want to share to make sure it gets included in our conversation today is taste buds. We have numbed our taste buds with these highly sugared, highly processed, even artificial sweeteners ingredients in our foods today. So when people say, oh, I don't like the way that tastes. Well, I remember in culinary school, because I went for a while, and one of the things the chefs used to teach us was it usually takes about 3 to 4 times of exposing your taste buds to a new flavor before it gets used to it, right? You try something one time for the first time and it seems a little odd. Your first thought is, oh, I don't like it. I'll never eat that again. Well, if it's something healthy, that was originally designed to help protect us in case we're eating something poisonous. But if it's not poison, if it's just a new flavor, give it at least 3 times trying it out before you just say no. And, there's always the reward in it too, right? So if kids are like, oh, no, I'm not eating that, nah. Well, let's engage them in the conversation, enroll them in participating, make a thing out of it, make a little game out of it or something, but get past one time, no good.
Got it. No, that's great. That's a great advice. And, I'm curious because, why did you choose the holistic health approach? Because in your family, you've got an uncle who's an MD, you've got a cousin who's a pharmacist, there might've been a little bit of that pressure of like, hey, follow the family tree.
Well, there was. When I originally told them I was going to become a naturopath. Now we're talking 35 years ago. They kind of looked at me like, we don't even know what that is. And they didn't then. And even today, I'm not sure they do entirely, but
right.
They said something doesn't sit right with me when you look at and again, you have to take this individually, but when you look at a lot of the doctors and pharmacists and other healthcare practitioners, they don't look that healthy.
Right.
And, to me, it's like, how could you be in the healthcare business and industry and don't look so well? And you actually are on all kinds of medications. Something was out of balance there for me. So I started exploring. I first became a massage therapist. Then I went into becoming exercise physio, and I was looking at maybe being a personal trainer. And then I started looking at the food, and I said, okay, well, there has to be something out there to bring all this together. The massage, the food, the holistic healthcare approach. And look, I'm going to be 62 years old. And thankfully, I listen to what I preach 95% of the time. Right. Nice. And because of that, I'm not on a single medication. Thank you. A quick misnomer. People say, oh, it's genetics. It runs in the family. No, what runs in the family is the potential for the genetics. I have diabetes on both sides of my family, both my mother's side and my father's side. They both died with it, not as a result of it, but as a complication. And that was I think that's one of the reasons I'm kind of drawn to this area. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that way. Genetics is just the blueprint for what's possible if you don't take care of yourself. Right. Heart disease, same thing. Just because my mother died of a heart attack and my cousin died of a heart attack doesn't mean I have to. It means I have to not live the way they were living.
Right. No, I love that it puts the control back in people's hands, because even if your health is not great today, is that you can literally turn it around with your next meal, right? Your next mouthful. Like you can just start moving in that direction and it starts making a big shift and change, right? So, same thing. I'm not on any medication. I've got 4 grandchildren. Like it's, I look at this here, I'm going to be 57. And it's just like, when you start looking at these choices, these daily choices that you're making actually have that impact and can affect how you're going to be in life. And so, as our theme this season is about how are you choosing freedom? So how are you choosing freedom in your life today?
One way, and it takes a little bit of practice, but one way is learning to take full responsibility for my actions, for my behaviors, for some of my challenges in life, whatever those are. If I take on being fully responsible, then what behind that is freedom. I don't blame somebody else. I'm not blaming the government. I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not blaming my uncle or anybody else, right? It's my responsibility to eat the way I eat, to pay and spend my money the way I choose to. If I look and I go, well, I don't have much of a savings. Well, what were you doing to create that? Right. So by taking on full responsibility for myself, my life, and all my actions, and again, sometimes it's harder than others and sometimes it's easier than others. But by doing that, I know that I have nobody to blame, and I don't even have to blame myself. I just have to learn. And so there's a freedom in that.
I love that. This is so great. Well, I know, Mitchell, that people are going to want to stay, in contact with you. And you also have a special offer for people who are listening in on the show to be able to get more resources.
Yes. Yeah. There's my website is literally, and I'll plug this in, is drmitchellkershner.com. And we're also going to be creating another link, which will get you there, is Dr. Mitchell ND, which stands for Naturopathic Doctor, drmitchellnd.com. Both of those will get you there. And on there's the books. So I've got several books available and actually a sugar detox program at a very reasonable price. And just so the listeners know, any purchase, I'm going to supply a certain code, and I will be sharing that with Diane. And when you implement the code, we're going to be donating a portion of all of our proceeds to the organization that we discussed beforehand.
Yes, thank you. So a lot of you know that we do what we can to help support eradicating human trafficking. And one of the charities that are doing some really great local work is Generating Hope. And so, a percentage of sales that people get, not only to help you have the resources to help your children, to help yourself, to be able to change around how you choose your health, it also helps women and girls and children to be able to change their life around as well. So we thought we'd, come together as a win-win. And so the links will be in the show notes. You'll be able to get that, and we'll have you put in the code SPALIFE, and you'll be able to, purchase that book and be part of that donation as well. So thank you so much for doing that and for being here on the show.
Oh, this was fun. And, I just want to close my part of it by saying thank you, Diane, not only for hosting this, but for being the example in today's world of 4 grandchildren. And you hardly don't look like you have one grandchild. And again, it's all part in how we take care of ourselves. And, in my thing, it's about spirituality, and spirituality is taking care of this very thing that we call our temple. And it's not as hard as you think, right? Simple little things that we can do. So my hat off to you, and hopefully your listeners will gain something from our conversation today and make some changes.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for our listeners out there. If it's your personal health or someone please share this, get this out there. People may go, oh, I know that, but what are you doing about it? Like, what are you shifting and changing? I'm too busy, or I got life going on. Well, at some point, if you don't address this, you're going to be in a hospital. You're going to have a diagnosis. You're going to have those things. And then you're going to have life force you to make that decision. Be proactive. Make those decisions and shifts and changes today, and that allow you to live a much more fuller, happier life. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.